Hey, welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Interdonato. The Black Knight Nation podcast is brought to you by Higher Echelon. We appreciate Joe Ross and Higher Echelon sponsoring this podcast. Big apologies for not being around. This podcast has been a little bit dormant, but we're back here. We're going to talk some Army spring football, and we're also going to talk to Nick Schrag, who's our guest here. Nick just was hired for his first college position as a coach. We're going to talk about that. We have Cuthbert from Sidelines Army here. And we're going to even get into other sports too. So if you guys would like to talk about anything is on the table pretty much. We're going to talk football first. Send us your questions and comments. We will post them right up. Also, I believe in the comments, you can also send us a super chat if you'd like to support Black Knight Nation and this podcast. We appreciate that too. So here we go. Can't believe it's already Army's just completed their spring practice. It's crazy. It moves pretty fast. I remember a few weeks back, they were on spring break. It was kind of halfway through the spring, and now they have finished spring practice. And now what's next? I mean, before you know it, preseason will be here, and another Army football season will be around. And, you know, talking to Coach Monken and the players, they're coming off a 12-2 season. That's in the rearview mirror. This is a different team, and they had their black and gold game Friday night, and there's a lot of questions from it seemed like from Coach's press conference, he was pretty happy with the way things went. You can see that on our YouTube channel at Black Knight Nation. We have Coach Monken, I think it's 16 minutes of him talking about the team and where they're at. People want to know, Cuthbert and Nick, people want to know the quarterback situation, who's going to replace Bryson Daly. People want to know, how's the offensive line looking? The Joe Moore award-winning offensive line that lost 3 starters, 3 really good offensive linemen, great offensive linemen from that offensive line. Does anybody know wants to know who the kicker is? I do. Dawson Jones, freshman, is the number 1 kicker right now. So, Nick, you probably want to know that. Maybe going into the spring, there was, who was going to be the number 1 quarterback, there's going to be a competition. Coach Monken said that he was going to let it all play out to a point where he kind of split up reps during practice too, between Dwayne Coleman, who's going to be a rising senior, Ethan Washington, rising sophomore, Cale Helms, who is a rising junior. So 1 in each class basically. And, as we end spring, Dwayne Coleman is at the top of the depth chart. That's what Coach Monken said Friday night. If anybody was at the spring game on Friday night, they separated the black and gold teams. Dwayne Coleman was first team offense with the black. Cale Helms and Ethan Washington was with the gold team. Cale Helms took the first reps of the gold team's offense. I don't know what that means. Does that mean Cale Helms is number 2, Ethan Washington's number 3? I think they're kind of interchangeable right now, to be honest with you. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe Cuthbert, what kind of your thoughts heading maybe as spring is over and now there's the competition there? There's another guy to throw into the mix, Zach Mundell. He hurt his knee in last spring game, missed all last season. He's a guy who's played slot receiver, slot back. He's an explosive player. Coach Monken says they're giving him some reps at the end of spring at quarterback. If it doesn't work out at quarterback, they want to move him to another position. So those are pretty much the 4 guys right now at quarterback for Army.
Well, I think that's the biggest question we have coming into 2025, following the truly historic season that Bryson Daly had in 2024. His graduation, that I think is probably the biggest question mark, bigger even than what's going to happen with the offensive line, who lost, 3 guys, the Joe Moore Award, number 1 offensive line in the country. But I think what is going to happen at quarterback between last year and then obviously 2 years ago, we've had a shift in our offensive coordinator with the departure of Drew Thatcher. But when Dwayne Coleman comes in, he's thought by many in the fan base to be primarily or ideally a shotgun quarterback. Are we going to be looking at a lot of shotgun? I personally don't think so. I don't want to put too much conjecture out there. These are cadets. These are, they're grown men, but we're talking about 19 to 22-year-olds. I don't want to treat this like these are paid professionals who should be subject to all sorts of scrutiny. I'll tell you that in my opinion, if I knew nothing else, if it was in a vacuum, my prediction would be we should expect Coleman to be starting the season. If things get a little shaky, my guess would be he would go to Washington. There's a lot of scuttlebutt amongst the fan base that he's sort of next in line. But as I said, I'm not trying to create a lot of storylines and things that detract and distractions and all of that. Monken is a system guy. He is a very orderly, look, you do your time, you learn the system, you move up, and you get rewarded for it. And if you can't perform, then he may go in a different direction. But this is the last coach in the country who is going to take the shiny new, unproven prospect over the veteran who, frankly, he's done everything we could have asked him to. I mean, he came in against Air Force last year. He won the game. This is Coleman's position to lose, and I don't think he's going to lose it. And I think we're going to be pretty well situated. I mean, based off that 58-yard run that he cracked off in the spring game, I think that's really good. The next big question is obviously the offensive line. I think between Jeffcoat and Appleton, we've got two guys who have so much experience. Even though they weren't starters last year, they're going to be coming in to support or to join Small and Generali. I mean, I think our offensive line, it's less a case of rebuilding and much more a case of reloading. And I haven't even gotten to the defense yet because we lost a bunch of captains who were all great players. But apart from those guys, we have so much coming back on defense. There's so many fewer questions. I will just say one last point. I am absolutely not immune, but expecting Coach Monken in these situations to undersell everything, to talk about how much more improvement we need to make and how there's still so many questions and how so much is unclear. And if we think we're going to win a single game, we're going to have to do a lot better than that. And I didn't hear as much of that as I expected in his post game. And I'll tell you, I didn't hear very much of that following the 2023 spring game either. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because he knew 2024 was going to be a big year. Lo and behold, it was. And I think we could be lined up for another big year. I don't want to put too high the expectations on the team, but I think we have a lot of pieces to make sure that 2024 was not a one-hit wonder.
Nick, you played under Coach Monken, so you kind of know how these things work, how you come out of spring and where the team is at coming out of spring compared where it might be in preseason. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that a little bit? Can you give us a little bit of a player's perspective on me? Because Coach Monken, he's been at, Army since 2014, but I don't think, like Cuthbert said, I don't think his coaching philosophy is kind of and his thinking and the mottos of the team or those change much. So maybe you can give us a little insight into that.
No, 100%. So to your point, right? Coach Monken has been here a while. He's a tenured coach here, and the mottos and the quotes, right? Toughness, humility, effort, and execution. Can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? Do you care about me? That stuff's tried and true. That stuff's on the wall. It's written in stone. And to another point, I mean, Coach Monken is a system guy, right? He is going to reward the guys who are going to come in, go through the process, earn the right, understand the system. And as they develop, not just as athletes, but as cadets, and they understand the entire aspect of that cadet athlete life, they're going to be rewarded with more responsibility, right? And then coming out of spring, right? My freshman year, it's like drinking through a fire hose, right? You go through your first mat drills, and that's the great equalizer. That really is, for as a plebe, you're welcome to the team. You've earned it. And as spring, cuts begin to happen, you start to get an understanding of, okay, where are we going to be come the fall? Because from now to August in a regular program, right, you're going through, your camp season in June for, have prospects and recruiting. But we're different, right? We have our guys right now as high as we can get them physically. And, we're going to go into summer training. And that was always something that we were mindful of, like, hey, we're going to be football-less for a second as we complete all the tasks that are required of us as cadets. And then we balance that when we go into the staff, right? So when we go to the summer classes and the workouts, we begin to rebuild. I mean, I would say this, most of what Coach Monken has right now, just as an opinion and from what I've seen in the past as player, we're pretty locked in as it stands with what we have currently. So this is probably about a 90% look about what it'll look like going into Tarleton State in August. But summer camp, that's really just going to be a lot of fine tuning and integration with the young guys. So what we saw with the black and gold game, was it yesterday, is really going to be most likely our view into what game one's going to be like. Spring ball is definitely, in my opinion, much more rigorous than it is summer ball going into preseason camp. But the mission with is right now we've shifted over to getting ready to beat the guys coming in from Texas. Right, that's first and foremost priority. And I think the coaching staff that Monken has built around him and the people that we have there and the team-led or the player-led team is really going to do that for us. Coach Monken instills the standard. We execute to the highest with that. I mean, Coach John Saturnio, right, always says this: the biggest room is the room for improvement. And Coach Monken's always going to harp on that. We could always get better because we're never going to be bigger, faster, right, or stronger than any other team that we play, right? But we can out-tough every team. We'll out-fundamental every team. And we talked about quarterback, right, and who's coming in for the new position on the line. We've had this conversation every year. When AJ Sure left, who was up next? Ahmad Bradshaw. Okay, who's after Ahmad Bradshaw, right? Kelvin Hopkins. And then we started finding personnel year after year after year with the B-back situation, right, going from Kane Udo to Reed or whoever it was. I mean, we went through that when we left and had Larry, right? I'm blank on the last name. If you can help me out, Sal. The B-back from 2014. Was Larry
Dixon?
Yeah, when we went from Larry Dixon, I was like, okay, what do we got next? So we've always had next men up because of the system that Monken has in place where we're constantly developing cats. I love it. I think it's great. I think we're one of the last true teams that develops players throughout their 4 years. So when it's their time to come up, it's not, a rebuild season. To Cuthbert's point, it's a reload. And with the guys that we have on staff, I'm not worried about it at all. I think we're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah. I guess real quick, just want to give some insight on, we can talk about the offensive line in a second. Just wanted to give a little insight on, what you saw in spring. Players were held out because of injuries. And Thomas did not participate in the spring just because he was a little bit banged up and might have had something, that needed to be taken care of. Cody Harris-Miller, starting nose tackle, did not participate in the spring for precautions too. I think he was banged up with an ankle injury at the end of the year. Noah Nixon and Baylor Newsome slated to be the backups behind Caleb Fortner and Andon Thomas did not really get much of a run in the spring. So they'll be, in the preseason, you'll see those guys kind of step up and be the number 2 guys. In the spring game, even Hayden Reed did not play in the spring game. Donovan Platt did not play in the spring game. Samari Howard and David Clerk, slot backs, did not play in the spring game. So there was opportunities for players to step up, right? And so you look at like a Trey Benson, who was Army's return guy mostly last year. He's getting an opportunity to play more slot back. And, Coach said sometimes Trey is able to find yardage where it might not be there. So there are guys, like you say, that can, I think Benson will now be a junior. So moving into his junior year, I think the guy to watch on the offensive line, Appleton seems like he was kind of waiting in the wings for Connor Finucane and Lucas Scott to graduate. I mean, you look at the videos and you see the growth he's gotten in the weight room. And then you have also Will Jeffcoat, a guy who missed 2 years ago because he got hurt and came back and was essentially the 6th offensive lineman last year on that Joe Moore award-winning team. If there was a 6th guy, you'd probably pick Will Jeffcoat to be in that picture. So that's the left side of the line. Teddy Williams is a guy that I wrote about recently, and I get a lot of Brett Toth vibes from Teddy Williams. I just get a lot, he's 6'4". He's told me he gained 15 pounds since he was told in the offseason, asked in the offseason, hey, do you want to move the tackle? You're a tight end. You basically, you can compete in the tight end room, or you can come out to tackle and see what we think that you could be a good blocker and we think you could fit well into our scheme. He said, sure, I'll give it a try. And he's bought in. So Teddy Williams is a guy that they probably want to be that. He he's a pretty big guy. He's like 6'4", maybe close to 6'5". He's now 280 pounds. He's talking about how you have to eat every 2 to 3 hours a day to like gain the weight. He'll probably be around like 290-ish probably by the time preseason hits. And there's athleticism there, right, Nick? When you come from being a tight end, right? You come from being a tight end, you've got to be pretty athletic to play tight end Army's system because you got to block most of the time. You're probably the sixth blocker when you're in the game anyway, right? So, and then you got to be able to have the athleticism to go out and catch a pass when you're thrown to, So, I mean, you're bringing some pretty good skills there. Let's get to Jeff Generali real quick. Appreciate it. Henry looks great, and Will is very, very good. Yeah, Will Jeffcoat was starting very young in his Army career. So Will Jeffcoat, he has experience in games. He has played in games. And so you put Cuthbert, you put the interior of the offensive line, Will Jeffcoat, Brady Small, and Paolo Generali. And you're going to run up the middle a lot in this offense, we assume, right, with the fullback or with the quarterback lead. That's three pretty good guys too.
I mean, I think that I think it sets up really well for us next year. The first time I heard Will Jeffcoat's name, and this is not scientific in any way, but early to mid-season last year, there was like a social media video that came around. It was a bunch of Army, players leading a team meeting. One of these deals where they walk out the door and they're faced to a camera and a board that's got a question on it, something about, who is Army's MVP, something along those lines. I can't remember exactly. And, they come out and they just look at it and they quickly fire off, whatever. Bryson Daly, Noah Short, like they're naming guys. And I don't know who it was, but somebody named Will Jeffcoat. And I can't remember what the question was. Hardest worker, MVP, best leader, some superlative. And somebody said Will Jeffcoat. I remember I watched that video and I said, I don't even know who that is. And so I looked into who it was. This is maybe October of last season. And ever since then, his name keeps popping up. He got so much playing time last year. I think him specifically coming into the offensive line is really going to be a continuation of what we saw last year. Mm-hmm. So I have no concerns about the offensive line. I know that when you go from being the number one offensive line in the country and then losing 60% of your players, there's going to be some shakeup. But sincerely, I have no concern about the offensive line. I think that bodes very well for guys like Jake Grandina, Hayden Reed, Noah Short, Howard, and the list goes on and on. I think it's going to be just a really great year, but I am a glass half full. I drink the Kool-Aid. That is my fandom.
We when you talk about the offensive line too, there are guys who have seen, because last year when Army was getting ahead really big in the second half, some guys like Dwayne Coleman would come in with the second team, and there would be guys getting those game reps, banking those game reps. And if they're third quarter or fourth quarter bank reps, Tanner Bivens, Elaine Parks, guys like that, like a Henry Appleton, those guys, and even the Will Jeffcoat, getting those bank reps is going to really pay off for this season, I think. And they have some younger guys, they have some younger tackles. They moved like Teddy Williams wasn't the only tight end they moved to tackle. They moved a couple other guys because tight end was pretty set, and the people that they have about 4 guys that they're looking at a tight end. Parker Pulowski is the number 1 tight end, I would say. Then you have Brian Dyer. You have Tex Brennan in there, who's a freshman. You have Noah Pryor, who's a freshman. That they had like abundance of tight ends, and so they move guys like Teddy Williams. They move guys like Nolan Tabasca. They move also James Rothstein out there later in the spring. So these guys are pretty. Like I said, they're athletes, and I think like Rothstein's like 6'5" or something like that. You're gonna see this Army team come out, and if some of the guys get a run that they want to get out there, like the Teddy Williams of the world, they move Grayson Baker, a freshman tight end, in the defensive line. The dude is like 6'7", 6'8" out there playing defensive end. He stands out. Now, if they need to put a little weight on him in the offseason, you get a little weight on Grayson Baker, and maybe he creeps up into that rotation that they like to play. maybe he's a situational guy. I remember when Ali Villanueva was playing defensive line early in his career for Army. When you're 6'9" or 6'10" and you got some height on the defensive line, on passing downs, you go in there, your job is to bat down some passes, right? I mean, your job is to get up there and bat down some passes. So these are guys that
if there's anything that this coaching staff specializes in, it is finding the right player for the right position at the right time.
Yep.
We are as a team so much better than the sum of our parts. And I really do think that starts with Coach Monken and just bleeds all the way through the coaching staff, where they find those diamonds in the rough who may not fit a particular position, drive in and drive out, but you put them in the right spot at the right time and they deliver. I think we punch above our weight and have for some time, and it's exactly because of things like that. So sorry to interrupt you.
No, fine. That's awesome. Nick, I mean, you've probably seen a guy like coaches moved around during your career, and you're like, okay, let's see what happens. And then they turn out to be really good at what they do. I don't know if somebody pops out in your playing days where there was a coaching, a position switch and by the coaches, and it's proved to be pretty successful. I'm trying to think back when you played.
Kalen Holt, Andy Davidson. I mean, Kalen Holt.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk. I'm going to say this name because this kid embodied. You talk about toughness. You talk about the toughest person that I've ever met. It's Mike Beattie. And then you talk about players who I played with who are selfless. I mean, he's just a team first guy, plug and play. Kalen Holt. If there were more Kalen Holts that we could put in an Army system, I mean, God bless. I mean, that kid was a dog. Is a dog. Workhorse for us. Never complained a day in his life. Was good at everything. We would do all kinds of things in the off season, and he was just athletic for every possible reason. And that's the guy. So, like, Cupper, to your point, like, you're correct. I think we are more than some of our parts. And then with who we have in that staff, we will plug and play guys who have shown that they can be trusted, and they're going to go out there and they're going to outwork everybody. At the nucleus of what we do in Army football, it is the toughest, most fundamentally sound team, and we are that to an extent. I mean, golly, we won the Joe Moore Award, right? The toughest 5 guys on that team are going to be that offensive line, and we beat out all the 5 stars and all these things in the world because we were tougher, more fundamentally sound, and we executed routinely at a high level, right? And that's just a testament to the brand that Coach Monken has established in his tenure. And we were going to continue to see the results of that labor continuously because the guys we bring in are vetted, right? They work through the system, and when it's their time, they go up. You want to talk about a guy that made the most of his opportunity and he's out at the next level now? Is a guy who waited until his senior year to get the most playing time. That was John Radigan. Yeah. That kid is a dog, was always a dog, never complained, was just in there, nose to the grindstone. And look what he's doing now. We are, I think, the preeminent example of a next man up football program. And we're never going to flinch, right? We're going to bleed a while and we'll get up and fight some more. That is every day for us. I'm not concerned about who are we going to replace at quarterback? Why? Because of the guys that we have at the helm. I think Cody Worley is a tremendous OC, right? We saw the transition, seamlessly when he took over play calling when we played Coastal Carolina, and we saw, the fruits of that labor. And so when it's like, hey, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Ethan Washington or Dwayne Coleman? Whoever it could be, right? They're going to go out and they're going to execute at a high level because they understand the assignment. They understand the roles and responsibilities, and we're not playing golf, right? It's not one dude out there, right? We're going to plug the guys behind a guy that I want to shout out here because he's getting so much praise as it is now and will continue to get praise. Brady Small, right? I haven't seen a center like that since, golly, who comes out at first?
Bryce Holland, maybe?
Bryce Holland. Golly, right? That's a guy who I would follow into the dark, right? Honor grad Ranger school, that is a tough human being. And Brady Small, right, needs his flowers. And it's going to start with him, right? And what we have there with the coaching staff, we're going to execute. And we're only going to get better as the season progresses. That's our thing. We're going to find what the faults are. These coaches are meticulous. They're detail-oriented. And Coach Monken at the helm is going to be able to identify, hey, where are the mistakes, right? Because I remember coming in right? To the team meetings after a game, you look on the board, right, and on our goals and the things that we came short with. Coach Monken's always looking to the next one, right? How to improve, because complacency is a cancer. It's carcinogenic, and there's no room for that in this program and how we execute, right? We're not going to be flashy and throw it down the field and do a million things. We're going to play our brand of football, and guess what, gentlemen? It worked, right? It worked. We were AAC champs. We did all these great things, but to Coach Monken's point, that does not help us win games this year. What we have is the product in front of us. I think that we're in a really, really good spot defensively, offensively. I think at special teams, I think Coach Sean Saturnio could be coaching out the Green Bay Packers, right, with his eyes closed. But we have the fortune of having him and the rest of that staff there who are true blue executing at a high level. I mean, tremendous.
Couple quick things I just wanted to point out real quick. You mentioned John Radigan. John Radigan, Cole Christensen, and Elijah Riley were the honorary captains for Friday night at the Black and Gold game. Army put out, I believe, a video this week today on their social medias about Coach Monken going through like all the accolades that they had, why they were Army players to the team, I guess, before the game. So, I mean, there you go. They're put front and center, those three guys who were, Elijah Riley started was pressed into action his freshman year, started all 4 years at corner for Army. Cole Christensen, 2-year captain. John Radigan, like you said, how he came up his senior year, waited his time, and had a really great senior year in 2020. So those guys were the honorary captains. If you look on our YouTube channel on the shorts, we have a quick second with Black Knight Nation talk to Elijah Riley at the Black and Gold game, and we're hoping to get Elijah on soon to talk about where he's at in his NFL career and the foundation that he's also really involved in. So look for that pretty soon, we hope. I was gonna say Kalen Holt real quick. If you go into Lincoln Financial Field in underneath where you go into the press conferences, you'll see still the photo of Kalen Holt's catch in the snow in that snow game, which is one of the better catches I've ever seen an Army player make. Nick, I know that's something that you probably witnessed too. That catch that he made in the snow that helped move keep the drive going in late in that game was pretty impressive. Let's go to a question real quick. Andrew S., thanks for joining us tonight. Is Bryson Daly still planning to do a GA? I imagine he would be involved in the QB room. He was at he was around the team, I guess, in the spring. He is going to be the GA at Army Prep. That was the plans for him to go to Army Prep and kind of mentor the young quarterbacks there. I don't know how you could have a better GA at Army Prep for those guys coming in. I mean, that to have a Bryson Daly who's been through it all at West Point, and his dad's a coach. That he. I don't know. I see Bryson Daly when it's all said and done and his military obligations are complete. If he's not a coach somewhere, I would be very surprised. He is a guy who, at Pro Day, Army Pro Day, you had Casey Reynolds, you had Brett Jarena, and you had Lucas Scott. Bryson Daly is a guy who is going, he wants to do his military service. He wants it. He played his last down, it looks like, for football. But how do you get back? Coaching, right? And he could coach the next generation of Army quarterback at Army Prep. He was at Army Prep. He's been through Army Prep. He knows the deal. That's going to be pretty. Yes, the answer to the question is yes. He's going to GA, but he's going to GA at Army Prep, to my knowledge. Guys, if you have any more questions, please send them our way. We'll answer them. We'll put them up. Appreciate it, Andrew S. Real quick, wanted to put a cap on the offense, so we'll talk about the defense. A couple things. Watching Liam Fortner in scrimmages this year, he's going to be a senior wide receiver. I think that he's going to take the next step in the offense. I think that hopefully they target maybe Liam a little bit more. I saw him go up and make a couple good catches when I was present at scrimmages. I think that he can be – Casey Reynolds was a really good guy for Army in the 2024 season, right? He averaged over 20 yards per catch. They need to have that in their offense. They need to find that wide receiver or pass catcher to do that. Is it Liam Fortner? Is it Toby Olawale? Is it Noah Short? Got to get the ball to those guys to open up a little bit more of the running game. So I just want to mention Liam Fortner. And I wrote a story today on Briggs Bartosh. I want to mention Briggs Bartosh real quick. He's a freshman. He was a slot back last year. I think he might have got to travel the games toward the end of the season. They decided to move him to fullback to be back this spring. And Coach Monken said in this post game for the black and gold game, and I wrote about it. He's different than the slot backs that they have. He's explosive. Not to say Hayden Reed's not explosive. Not to say Jake Rendina can be explosive, or Jarrell Dixon or Carson Smith, but he's a little bit different. We'll see what Briggs. See if Briggs can get some action. I have a feeling he could be a change of pace guy. I have a feeling they can go maybe 5 deep with the fullbacks this year in certain games. You'll have to have Hayden Reed carry the ball 30, 35 times this year, hopefully. Hopefully they mix it up and maybe Briggs Bartosh gets a run. Go ahead,
well, to the story that you published today about Briggs, Sal, I love seeing stories like this, to the point that we were just making, that, Army, it's very much not just a system-based offense, but you make the team as a freshman, you travel, you might see a tad of playing time at the end of a game that we've got in hand. Come sophomore year, you get a few more reps here and there. And then by the time you get to junior year, you are sort of the automatic heir apparent for your position. We're not going for the shiny new coin. We're going for the guys who have put in the time, put in the work, understand the system, who can be depended upon. And I look at a guy like Briggs Bartosh, and, I don't want to write his future for him. Maybe he, busts out and he's incredible this year. Trust me, I'd love nothing more. But knowing that we have someone like that sort of in the pipeline, because if you are behind Reed or Dixon and you don't have the weight or the size, necessarily the power of Jake Rendina or Carson Smith, but knowing that he's there and he's kind of working his way up. I still remember when Max DiDomenico was a freshman, and Jeff Monken is mentioning him in press conferences the same way he mentions Briggs Bartosh, and it's like, it was still a year and a half before he really made his presence felt on the field. But when he did, he was a captain. He was the cornerstone of our defense last year. So seeing that we are already identifying some of those could be key players, even if it's 1 to 2, hell, even 3 years out. I mean, it makes me very optimistic about the future of the program.
Yeah, they do it for a reason, right? They just leave Briggs, and Briggs got some carries in the black and gold game. Coach Monken talked about a play that he had where he looked like he was going to lose his balance, kept his balance, was breaking tackles. So he's going to make things happen. We'll see what happens if that happens earlier in the season. We'll see. Let's get to the defense. Like Cuthbert, you mentioned before, yes, the captains are lost. Kyle Lewis, Max DiDomenico, Cody Wanamaker are graduating. But when you still can bring back guys like Caleb Fortner and Andon Thomas, who are your inside linebackers, who are kind of that core to your defense, right? And then you also have talents like Elo Madozi coming back, and Cody Harris-Miller. Cody Harris-Miller was a difference maker for Army last year. Him playing nose tackle made a difference on their defense. It allowed Kyle Lewis to play defensive end, and it opened up a little bit more things for the defensive line for guys to spread out and play where they're supposed to be playing, so to speak, right? He was the perfect fit at the nose tackle, and then you can have a Jack Latour and a Kyle Lewis as your defensive ends. There's a lot of the questions might be who's going to replace Max DiDomenico, right? And Max was when it's all said and done, he started 3 years at West Point, and like you said, he was no doubt the vocal leader of the defense last year in 2024. Right now, it's a battle between Gavin Shields, who's going to be a senior, and Colin Matson, too. They're right in the middle. They're duking it out for that spot, and both have received playing time. Matson's probably saw more playing time in the safety position. Shields was more of a nickel back last year for Army. They have been on the field for Army. They've had made plays for Army. Gavin Shields seemed to be around the ball as a nickelback when he was in the game. He seemed to be knocking down passes, being in the middle of things when he was out there. So those are the guys that are going to replace looking to replace Max DiDomenico. And then here's the thing that we definitely want to watch out for. Eric Ford was the backup to Elo Madozi last year. So on third downs, they move things around, but Eric Ford gave maybe Elo a breather. Maybe it was 60-40 Elo Ford. Now they're moving Ford out to that Apache position, which is that kind of nickel position. They want to put their best players on the field at the same time, right? They don't want Eric Ford playing 25% of the plays, 40% of the plays. They want Eric Ford out. He's going to be a senior. He's proved when he's out on the field, he can make some plays. He can pressure. He can get at the quarterback. Now let's see if he can cover a little bit too, So that's certainly something to watch. But those are guys, we're talking about guys who are not like just walking onto the field for their first time. We're talking about guys who have gotten experience, like you said, Nick, in the system. Cuthbert, like you said, in the system. They've kind of waited their turn, so to speak, and here they are. So that's my defensive rant right there. And maybe if you guys have any insight with that.
Yeah, I would say that for the defense this year, I'm coming in there, and I already feel good about the offense. I think the defense is, I would even really call that a reload. I would just make sure, because like you were saying, those guys who are on the field have already had a lot of game experience, right? And also on special teams. So this is not like they're going into their first games and they're trying to figure stuff out. To your point, Coach Monken, Nate Woody are always going to put the team in the best position to succeed. That's going to be the best 11 they could come up with to ensure that they have the utmost amount of success. And the defense did a really, really, really good job, right? At corner, right, you got Donovan Platt, right, who wears that 28 very well. Right. And that's a guy like you had mentioned, a lot of these defensive cats did not get on the field for the spring. A lot of guys were nursing injuries. And I know that is by design. They want to ensure that we're getting all the young guys game experience under Mikey's lights and real deal opportunities to get evaluated. Because that's what this is. Spring ball is an evaluation period. And I think that with the D line that we have and what we're doing schematically, I think we are setting ourselves up for a tremendous defensive posture through and through. There really isn't a space to where I'm like, we lost a guy, right? Max DiDomenico, right? He is a tenured cat, had a lot of ball for us, produced a lot. But again, we've had that happen in the past where we've lost one or two guys. And it's like, okay, where do we go from here, right? When Ryan England graduated, where do we go from here, right? The next man was up. I like Gavin Shields going in. I think he's going to be a guy who's always around the ball, right? He's a nose for it. He's a physical cat. He's communicative. But let's not forget, too, who we also have back there, right? Casey Larkin's coming back, correct?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, my God. Like that is a kid who, again, if Max DiDomenico wasn't there, it's going to be Casey Larkin all day, all night. That's a kid who defensive or offensive coordinators got to keep an eye out for, right? That was a fun 1-2 punch. So I think that with Gavin going in there and Casey going back there, I'm excited about it. I can't wait, when I'm done tagging tape for my job, making sure I can watch some of the highlights and see how they perform, because we have a true blue tier 1 blue chip DC in Nate Woody and his staff. It is tremendous. I'm excited for it. They're not going to just be efficient. They're going to be lethal.
Yeah. Cuthbert, your thoughts?
I think given the quantity of experience that we are bringing back on the defense is really setting us up for potentially another really standout season in the American. Now that it's our second year in the league and we are getting a fair number of repeat teams who saw us last year, I think our offense is going to be, they're going to have opportunities to scheme and game plan against us. We're also obviously losing a generational talent in Bryson Daly. So that much more is going to fall on the defense. There were plenty of games in 2024 where we were getting ahead so swiftly, or at the very least, we were controlling the game. We were so dominant that the defense didn't have as much pressure on it. I think we stood up and we delivered somewhat unexpectedly last year. Now that we have all of this returning talent, I think our defense is really going to lead the way. I am personally, and I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm predicting another huge year for us across the board. And I think a lot of that is going to be because of our defense, and that is going to outweigh the fact that so many of the defenses we're going to be facing will have already seen our offense once over. Plus, we've got a new quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. I couldn't be more content with the defense as it's coming back. Both the guys who you've heard of, right, Andon Thomas, on and on and on, and then whether it's Gavin Shields, whether it's Colin Madsen, like I have more confidence in our defense and in Nate Woody than I have had in quite some time, and I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, 8 returning starters back on defense, but you look at, Ford could have been a starter, last year. Jacob Tuioti, who's the second string nose tackle, has played in games. He started in games. It's not like and you look at the corner situation when you have Donovan Platt, as you mentioned, Nick. Jaden Mays was all over the ball last year. He had multiple interceptions, and Justin Weaver, as a reserve, had a couple interceptions last year too. You basically have 3 guys there at corner with starting experience there, or could be your starters. So, the depth is there. In some places, maybe not. The defensive line right now, the way it shapes up is you got Cody Harris-Miller as your nose tackle. You got Jack Latour, who will be going into his 3rd season starting on defensive line, I believe. And then you have DeShantez Gray, should be the starting defensive end, the other starting defensive end. But then you're going to have guys. There's a younger guy to watch out for, and Coach Monken talked about him briefly in his post black and gold game. Jack Bosom. He's a freshman going into his sophomore year. He got injured last year, did not play. Coach Monken is very high on him. I think he's probably taken like second team reps. He's a taller guy. He's number 99. He's going to stand out on the defensive line. He's going to be like, they got him. They got young guys like Grayson Baker. They got there's another freshman too that's going to be a sophomore who's like a 6'6", 6'7" guy. They're looking for the big ends. They're looking for the stout nose tackles, and they are building like a lot of depth on that defensive line like they always do. Cuthbert and Nick, right? They like to bring those guys. They like to rotate those guys, and they like to keep them fresh. Cody Harris-Miller is not going to play like 90% of the snaps. Probably not. They're going to rotate the guys in, and if you can build a 6 or 7 like they played in the last couple years and rotate those guys in, I think you guys are right. I think this is gonna be maybe at the beginning of the season, maybe not the opener, but when you go to Kansas State, Nick, we talked about this before the podcast started, you might want to lean on your defense a little bit against a top 25 team when you're at Kansas State, and you have that defense, right? You have that defense that can do that, and maybe Dwayne Coleman gets a chance to get his little bit more comfortable in that quarter as a starting quarterback because of this defense. That's the way I see things. We'll see. That's the one name that came off from Coach Monken that maybe you guys haven't heard of is that Jack Bosom guy, and we've seen Monken start sophomores in the past. Cody Harris-Miller started last year on the defensive line. Jack Latour got some time as a sophomore on the defensive line. If you're physically mature enough to play up front and take up the gap space to have the linebackers make plays, you're going to get a good chance to play. And I get Jack Bosom really took the next step up for Army in the spring, and we'll see what happens there. We'll get to special teams real quick, and then we'll get to what's up with Nick's future there. Who's going to kick? Trey Granati was the kicker last year. It was his first year kicking, and Trey had a really good season for him. He was really consistent from the jump. And you look at now what Trey graduated, who's next? And I said that at the beginning of the podcast, Dawson Jones is the guy he's a freshman going into his sophomore year. He's the guy who's won the number 1 team coming out of the spring practice, first team kicks, I guess you could say. And he had a couple field goals, short in nature, but still made them and was smooth in the spring game. Good sign. And you have the snapper Owen Walter back, which is a good thing too. They can start, Nick, from special teams to get that consistency down from the snapper to the holder to the kicker in the spring is very important. And when you have a guy who snapped, Owen Walter was the snapper for all 14 games for Army last year, and to have that, how important is that to have a long snapper? I don't think we mentioned Owen Walter enough on this podcast, but they didn't really have too many I don't remember too many off snaps last year from him. So, I mean, having that experienced guy back, punter James Wagenseller is back. He was the starter. Cooper Allen, the starter from 2 years ago, is behind him. So they have a lot of experience in the punting game. Anderson Britton, just to note real quick, Anderson Britton, he tore his ACL, I think in the second game last season. He is still not kicking yet, but Coach Monken says if he can come back and be able to play early in the season, that he's right in the competition to be Army's kickoff specialist again. He was Army's kickoff specialist when he got hurt. And so Anderson Britton's another guy to throw into the mix in the kicking. Man, special teams, we talked about Saturnio, right, being consistent. These guys, like Trey Granati is definitely an example that, you know, a guy who waited his turn and was really consistent for it. And it's a lot of coaching. It's a lot of belief, right, Nick? It's a lot of what Coach Saturnio preaches, so to speak.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Coach Saturnio, right, when I was working with him, and again, I cannot say enough good about Coach Saturnio. He's still a mentor to me. He's a monstrous reason why I got into coaching. But again, the Wars won with the 5 inches between the ears, right? And we read Mind Gym. It was all about the mental game, right? Because we have the ability. That's why we're there. And again, it's like we're out there, and there's a lot of pressure, I think, with every position. But Coach Monken is a special teams guru. I got to sit down with him at the AFCA, and we just talk shop. But I would say that Coach Monken's understanding of special teams down to a cellular level is so important, and it is why Coach Sean Saturnio continues to be rhythmically successful. And I love what we got going in there for sure. I know that, like with all positions, we have depth at special teams, like we always have had, right? And again, with a long snapper, right? That is a big deal. Again, it's one of those unsung heroes of it. I had a great one in Scott Flanick. I mean, that kid is tough as nails. And I mean, I think back on a place for Scott Flanick, my last Army Navy game in 2018, him absolutely laying the wood on my last punt in the game, and absolutely demolishing a Navy guy, just being an absolute impact, right? That 10th player on the field was not a liability, and we have that still. So I think that I agree with what we have at kicker right now, right? I think it's Dawson Jones. 100%, right? Mr. Generale already saying one of the best athletes on our team's a long snapper. I think that's by design. I know it's by design because you look at what all the specs do when we go into workouts, right? They're strong. They are workhorses. We're competing out there in the fourth quarter drills. We're getting points. We're winning drills, and we are football players that happen to kick, happen to punt, happen to long snap. And what we have available with, I think, Dawson Jones, first and foremost, boom, that's a tried and true player. We're not a 55-yard kick team. We don't like to kick on fourth down. And Coach Monken hates punting. So we are special circumstance individuals. But when the time is called, like Sal, you had mentioned, like, hey, we were hitting, what people call colloquially the chip shot kicks. Well, that's usually what we're going to see, right? And that's fine, right? We're consistent when we're told to fight, right? And that's the right answer. I think if I'm looking at it, kickoffs, it's all, if you can hit a touchback, God bless you. I mean, that's the point, right? But I have a little bit of a wince with punting at the moment, just because I know I have a lot of guys with experience, and I know they're figuring it out and they have it all squared away. Either if it's Cooper Allen or James Wagenseller, I think we're in good hands, but we have to ensure that we're consistent. I was bit by that my sophomore year when I was starting, right? Inconsistency. I stepped it up junior and senior year, but it's being in those positions to succeed consistently so we can flip the field. But again, I'm preaching to a choir that has mastered special teams, in my opinion. I think that we are, I think Coach Turnio got ranked like top 10. I don't think it's good enough as a special teams coordinator, but I like where we're at. I like the talent we're bringing in as young guys. I think they have a really keen eye for quality specialists. And I think that we're not too far off, right, from getting another Ray Guy nominated kid. Or if we do kick more, I mean, I wouldn't put, Dawson Jones out of the realm for, the Groza if he gets enough kicks. But I don't want to kick, right? If we're kicking, that means the offense isn't executing. And I know coach is pissed.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Jake Holstein also, I think he's a freshman. He had a 46-yard field goal in the black and gold game too. Another guy to keep an eye on. A younger kicker too that stepped up, and he right now it would be the kickoff specialist as they break spring if Anderson Britton is not able to, depending on when Anderson Britton returns, they probably will compete for that job. Cuthbert, any thoughts on special teams real quick before we get to some other things?
Just that I have a long memory, and I know of what felt like multiple decades where we effectively didn't have any kickers. And, I don't want to say that to disparage any of the former players or the coaches of the teams that we had, but, following the rise of Quinn Moretzky and then transitioning straight into Trey Granati last season, and when he stepped up when Anderson tore his ACL and he stepped in for the kickoff duties, look, if you're telling me we've got a freshman in Dawson Jones who appears to be, number one on the depth chart, meanwhile, another kicker is hitting 46-yarders, that's telling me that we are sitting right where we need to be, at least in terms of special teams. I have the utmost respect for Coach Saturnio. Every year, I'm amazed he hasn't gotten poached by a larger program, and I knock on wood that it doesn't happen at the end of this season because he has our special teams truly as an elite package.
That bond between Saturnio and Coach Monken is like they're like really right. You can speak of it, Nick. They're really best friends. It's like his right hand man, so to speak. So I mean, where Coach Monken goes, I think Coach Saturnio goes. So that's just my opinion. Nick, let's get to what we see you with a William and Mary fleece there. Talk a little bit about what's next for you. I know when you were on here earlier in the past, you talked about wanting to get into coaching, and I know you were doing some high school coaching, but now you're taking the next step. So talk about that.
Yeah, no. So last we spoke, I was coaching at Gainesville High School in Northern Virginia. I was a special teams coordinator and tight ends coach for them the last 2 seasons under Dan Bruton, who was actually my high school wide receivers coach at Patriot in Northern Virginia. And from that time now, so I've officially transitioned out of the military as a captain. So it's bittersweet. I can't even begin to describe how grateful I am for the Army, for West Point, for forging me as a human being. I mean, I'm forever grateful. The best people in my life I've met has been as a byproduct of my time in service. And so I thought that, in transitioning into the coaching realm, it was the most similar a lifestyle, a philosophy that really would afford me the opportunity to continue to develop and lead men. And I truly believe that football is, outside of the military, this country's last hallowed bastion to forge men. And the best people in my life have been coaches, right? So my dad, having died young, I often looked left and right to see what father figures could help me develop into a man, and they have been coaches. It's a tough industry. It is a tough industry to get into. It is definitely not for the faint of heart, right? You have to be coming in for it for the right reasons, and everyone has their own. But candidly, I went in and I submitted over 175 college football applications at every level, internships. And it was a grind. I was going up and down the East Coast. I was out in Texas, and it's not without a lot of mentorship that I was able to get to where I am. First guy comes to mind, Coach Charlie Chandler, who was my defensive line coach out at Patriot High School. He's been with me since I was 13 years old, is the exclusive reason why I started this deal. Javon DeWitt gave me a call last April, and we talked about it at length about how to get in there. Brent Davis at Virginia Tech. I visited with Mark Tommerdahl at TCU. The list goes on. I'm being mentored by Rod Marinelli, Ben Kotwika, guys who have taken an interest in seeing me go and grind to get into this industry, and I'm eternally grateful. So as it stood, I accepted a position at William & Mary this past Wednesday under Coach Mike London, and that's a byproduct of really just his staff. It's tremendous that I get to work with the group of guys that I do there, and I'm fortunate that I actually have a former coach of mine from Patriot. His name is Keenan Carter. Played at UVA a coached out in high school ranks for a bit, went to Bridgewater, and is now the defensive line coach out at William & Mary, and has produced a myriad of All-Americans. I don't know how he has not gone to coach at Georgia, Texas. I mean, he's tremendous, and William & Mary is a storied program, right? Second oldest college in America, opened in 1693. The coaching tree from William & Mary is tremendous, right? There's tremendous shoes that they fill over there for guys like Lou Holtz, Sean McDermott, Joe Brady, Mike Tomlin. I mean, the list goes on. So I'm going into it, right, as a QC for defense and special teams, right? And for those of you who don't know, right, it's going to be a lot of tape tagging, a lot of on-the-field stuff, odd jobs. It's plug and play, right? And I think that from what I've seen, and truly the best coaches I've ever known, in having been a product of Coach Monken, I'm equipped from what they've taught me, right? The same tenets, and I'm just fortunate enough to get back into a position to where I can help a winning culture continue to develop with the experiences I bring. But I'm learning, right? I'm constantly learning. The biggest room for improvement, as per Coach Santurnio, and I'm looking forward to the journey. It's going to be, quick, fast, in a hurry, like drinking out of a fire hose, because the expectation is to win. We're not there for high fives and pats on the back, right? If people lose jobs, and families don't get fed. But I'm beyond elated to be afforded this opportunity. I mean, there's so many people that have been, shepherding me throughout this process, supporting me. My mother, Magda Schrag, my stepfather, Dave Wilkinson, my better half, Courtney Lammy, just all the people that without their support, I don't get to be in the position that I'm in. And if I get to be an iota like how Coach Monken is, I will have been successful for it, and I'm grateful.
Yeah, I mean, you love the game, right? And you want to get back to the game. So to be able to stay in the game after your service, I mean, and now you get a start, right? And it's what you make of it. It's what
Absolutely.
you make of it. So
every day is a job interview.
It's great. It's great to see. I know that this is what you want. 175 applications.
175. I lived on Indeed. But I come to find out when those applications go out to Indeed. Thank you, Mr. Generale. I appreciate that. But when those get out to Indeed, by that point, the job's already picked up. But I did some really phenomenal interviews that I was very humbled to do. Phil Longo at Sam Houston State gave me a call. I interviewed for their tight end coach position. I interviewed for Oregon State's running backs coach position. I've been mentored by Jeremy Springer from the New England Patriots. He's been giving great feedback. Jeff Banks, I'd interviewed for position with Texas. But God has a plan. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The things will follow, but a guy named Troy Everhart once told me, be where your feet are and coach the kids you got. And I'm not looking left or right. I work for William & Mary. I'm a coach for William & Mary. I bleed green and gold, and I'm going to continue to do so because the expectation is to win. I'm dedicated, and I have nobody to thank except for all the people in my past who have shown me what right looks like. And at the forefront of that's Coach Jeffrey Monken.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We look forward to following it. And now when I look at, my ticker, my score, I'm going to look at the William & Mary games a little bit closer, Nick, to see how you guys are doing. And it's great. It's great to see that. We want to get into some other Army sports. And Cuthbert, we had a sweep in Army men's and women's lacrosse in the Army-Navy game. And the women beat Navy 17-12 and earned the Star Series, not just the star for the game, the Star Series, 14-12. I believe Army won the series this year. I can't remember the last time Army won a Star Series in recent years, because I always see Navy trumping that, hey, they won the Star, they did this and did that. Well, now this year, Army with the 2 lacrosse wins clinches the Star Series. That's pretty big.
Well, I have it on insider information that by and large, people at the academy don't really care that much about the Star Series on a relative scale. That being said, it still feels good to finally win it. I don't even know when the last time we won it was, forever and a half ago. But shout out to Brendan in Jersey, the Hudson Lacrosse Academy. They came out in full force this weekend. The women's lacrosse team ranked before going into the game, number 24. They absolutely just mopped the floor with the midshipmen. Unranked but receiving votes coming out of Annapolis. Definitely a strong team. Thankfully, it was being played at home in some pretty chilly conditions, to be honest. I mean, you got to think that home field advantage, it might not have been as significant as Army Tulane in the AAC championship last year, but an absolutely dominant win. And then, listen, the men coming in ranked number 5, going to Annapolis, they had a packed house, all of the pressure in the world. Navy's coach's daughter sung the national anthem before the game. Everything was lining up for the perfect Cinderella upset. And listen, tip of the cap to Navy. Army is a fantastic team this year. They have been for a couple of years now. And so, they pushed us to overtime. We have effectively the number 1 defense in the country. And, I will say Navy, they did more than hang with us. That game, at no point was that game assured for us. And so to pull it off in overtime like that, so dramatic. In combination with the women's team, we get the Star Series. I think this is going to be a big year. It already is a really big year for Army lacrosse across the board. The women's team, I think, is probably a lock for the NCAA tournament. Not to take anything away from them, but with fewer teams competing and a little less even competition top to bottom in women's, it's collectively understood to be a bit of an easier trail to get to the NCAA tournament. We did it last year. Nothing but respect for that team and everything they've done. Bridget Duffy, she's breaking records every single game she plays. It's truly spectacular. It is believed that the men's team basically has to win out. The Patriot League does not get the respect in men's lacrosse that it deserves. If you don't win the Patriot League tournament, the likelihood of getting an at-large bid is very, very minimal because the committee is going to use the RPI or some other bogus computer algorithm to try and make sure that the 6th place Ivy League team or the 5th place ACC team gets in over, a ranked Patriot League team that maybe loses in the final. So for the men's team, it very much is a win or go home at this point. Yeah. We've got 2 games left in the regular season. If we win both, we have assured home field advantage throughout the Patriot League tournament. So every game is a huge game. I recommend and encourage all fans who can get to any game, whether it's at Mikey, whether it's on the road, to get out there and support our boys and girls, because this is a big season for the Black Knights. In other sports, and I'm going to just bomb this podcast real quick. Unfortunately, the rugby team eliminated this past weekend from the postseason. We went to Marietta, Georgia. We were playing Life University, the number 1 ranked team in the country. Life is a big dog. We dropped a heartbreak 18-17. I know that's not on a lot of people's radar. I'm a former rugger. I love rugby. And, we won the national championship 3 years ago. We haven't had a chance to get back to it since, but we will be back again. So heartbreak there, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the men's rugby team because really, really, really an incredible season where they overperformed expectations.
Absolutely. And you know what? On that rugby team, there's a lot of players a handful of players on that team that were recruited as football players for Army. And then they leave the football program and they want to play. They want to stay involved in the competitive sports, and they go to, they go to a lot of them go to rugby. Some go to sprint football, maybe, but some of them go to rugby. And I'm looking at the roster and I see a couple guys that, I already saw like 2 or 3 guys that were football recruits that are now rugby players. So it's good.
If you ever have a chance to go to the Anderson Rugby Complex, at West Point there, it's one of the best places in the country to watch a rugby game. And I don't know, it's my absolute favorite sport across the board. As much as I love football, as much as I love lacrosse and wrestling and so many other things, rugby will always have the number 1 spot in my heart. So I encourage anybody, anytime you have a chance to go see the Black Knights at Anderson, please make sure to go do it.
It's great to shout out to the other programs too. Like, yeah, we can cover the football team every podcast if we want to, but it's great to and we've had the other coaches on. We've had, Brian Riley on before his last game as Army hockey coach. We've had Joe Aberisi on this podcast on a regular basis. So we really definitely, I echo Cuthbert's sentiments there to support the other programs of Army. There's some really good competitive teams out there, especially that men's lacrosse team. I mean, they have the ability to win a national championship if everything goes right. So, I mean, let's see if they can get out of the Patriot League. And the women's, let's see if they can get back to the tournament and maybe win a game there. Be interesting to watch. Real quick, wanted to point out, we gotta get off in a minute or two, but recruiting for Army, they had 118 prospects at the Black and Gold game, Coach Monken said. That is a lot, and they have they had 2 recent commitments. I do have a story on Caden Ward up on our website. He's a Texas defensive back. He was recruited by Army and Navy. That story's up, and I'm going to write a story on Hunter Ogden. He committed at the Black and Gold game. He's a tight end out of Ohio. We'll get that story up soon on our website. Check that out. No, I don't know how many people are going to listen to this before Monday morning, but they are having a press conference for the new athletic director. Army is at 11 o'clock. Tom Theodokis they are having an introductory press conference. Seth Mendelson of Black Knight Nation will be there covering the press conference. We're hoping to get a one-on-one with Theo. And when we have that, check out our YouTube channel, Black Knight Nation on YouTube. That's where we post interviews. We have a Briggs Bartosh interview up there. We have interviews with Teddy Williams from a week past. We have interviews with Elijah Walton, linebacker. We have Noah Short interview up there. Just check out our Black Knight Nation page. There's a lot of interviews up there. The press conferences from after Friday's Black and Gold game are up there too. Man, thanks so much for everybody. We have over 400 people watching us tonight, and we really appreciate everybody that's watching us, sent us questions. And we got to thank Cuthbert for coming on. He's a regular on this stuff now, breaking down anything from Army football to rugby. We really appreciate that.
Whatever you need, Sal, I'm here. Whatever you need, man.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Nick, thanks so much for stopping in and giving us your perspective as a former Army football player. And also, all the best and good luck on your journeys as an assistant coach at William & Mary. We'll be staying in touch and hope to get you back on the podcast. Thanks so much.
And you beat Navy. Go Tribe.
Absolutely. We're out of here, guys. We'll be back soon, but check out Black Knight Nation. Check out our YouTube channel and our socials for everything Army athletics. Have a good night.